The strange thing is, I don't think I was ever chasing money. Money was just the fuel. The problem is, once you built out the rocket, you have to decide where to point it.
Was money ever the point?
No. I mean, not really. Money is useful because it lets you move resources. It lets you hire people, buy machines, build factories, launch rockets. But money by itself is not interesting for very long.
Then what was interesting?
The future. Or maybe making sure there is one.
And that never scared you?
It scared me all the time. I just didn't always call it fear.
What did you call it?
Urgency, which sounds better, more useful. Fear makes you look inward. Urgency lets you build something.
But it was still fear.
Probably. I just gave it a more productive name.
What was the first problem you thought about this morning?
Probably something extremely boring. A production constraint. A launch. Something like schedule. People think the big ideas are the hard part, but usually the hard part is a valve, a supplier, a line of code, or a machine that fails for a reason nobody understands yet.
Not Mars.
Mars is made of boring problems. That's what people miss. The dream is grand, but the work is mostly details. Materials, heat, cost, failure rates, manufacturing. Thousands of tiny things that all have to become less stupid over time.
Do you ever wake up without a crisis?
Not really. Or if I do, my brain starts looking for one, which is not necessarily healthy. But if you're working on rockets, cars, satellites, AI, the absence of a crisis usually means you haven't looked closely enough.
What does quiet feel like to you?
Suspicious.
Suspicious?
Yeah. Quiet can mean things are stable, or it can mean nobody has found the failure mode yet. In engineering, you learn not to trust silence too much. Machines don't care about your optimism. Physics doesn't care if you're tired. Reality gives you feedback whether you want it or not.
Is that comforting?
In some ways, yes. Reality is harsh, but it's honest. People are more complicated.
More complicated how?
People can say yes and mean no. They can say they understand something and not understand it. They can be afraid and call it strategy. They can resist change and call it wisdom. Machines are difficult, but at least they don't pretend.
Do you prefer machines?
I wouldn't say prefer. That sounds terrible. But machines are clearer. If a rocket explodes, it gives you data. If a person breaks, sometimes they don't tell you until years later.
Does that bother you?
More than I probably admit.
Were computers easier than people?
Yes. Much easier. Computers are difficult, but they're difficult in a clean way. If something doesn't work, there is a reason. You may not know the reason yet, but it exists. That was very appealing to me as a kid.
People didn't feel that way.
No. People were more confusing. They could be irrational, emotional, cruel, kind, sometimes all in the same day. With a computer, if you made a mistake, it would fail. With people, you could do nothing wrong and still get hurt.
What did code give you?
A little universe with rules. You type something, and the machine responds. It doesn't care if you're strange. It just runs the logic. For a kid who doesn't fit very well, that's powerful.
You sold a game at 12.
Yeah. Blaster. It was not exactly a great work of art, but it was real. That mattered more than anything. I made something in my head, then I made it exist outside my head, and someone paid for it.
What did that teach you?
That imagination is not just escape, it can become a product, a company, a rocket, a factory. The difference is whether you can make the thing survive contact with reality.
Did building things make you feel safer?
Maybe. I don't know if I would have used the word safe, but building gave me a way to interact with the world without asking the world for permission first.
That sounds important.
It was. When you're young and you feel like the social world has already made a decision about you, building something is a kind of appeal. You're saying, maybe I can't convince you with who I am, but I can show you what I can make.
Did that work?
Sometimes. Not always, but enough to keep going.
Did being misunderstood start early?
I think so. But I don't want to make that sound unique. A lot of kids feel misunderstood. Childhood can be brutal in very ordinary ways.
Ordinary?
Ordinary to the world, not ordinary when it's happening to you. That's the strange thing. Pain is common, but when you're inside it, it feels extremely specific.
What did you learn from it?
Probably the wrong things at first. I learned not to expect fairness. I learned that explaining yourself doesn't always help. I learned that if you can't win socially, maybe you can win through output.
Output?
Yes. Build something, solve something, make something useful. If people don't understand you, create evidence that is harder to ignore.
Did it make you tougher?
I don't know. Tougher is a word people use afterward to make pain sound efficient. At the time, it doesn't feel like toughness. It just feels like impact.
Impact?
Yeah. You get hit by something emotionally or physically or socially, and then you adapt around it. People call the adaptation strength. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just armor.
Did you build armor?
I think so. Projects became armor. Work became armor. If you are always moving towards some impossible thing, people have less time to ask what you're running from.
Were you running?
Maybe. But I would have called it progress.
That sounds like a pattern.
It probably is. A lot of what looks like ambition from the outside is more complicated from the inside. Sometimes you're not chasing greatness. Sometimes you're trying to get far enough away from a version of yourself that felt powerless.
Did you ever get far enough?
No, not really. You can leave a country, you can build companies, you can launch rockets, but the original operating system is still there somewhere.
What were you leaving when you left South Africa?
Constraints, some personal, some political, some economic. I wanted to get to the place where the biggest things were being built. And at that time, that meant North America, eventually the United States.
Was America the dream?
I don't know if I thought of it romantically. It was more like, where is the highest probability of building something that matters? If you're optimizing for that, you go where capital, talent, risk tolerance, and technology collide.
That sounds less like a dream.
It was a dream, just expressed as a probability function.
Did you feel free when you left?
Not immediately. Freedom is not just arriving somewhere. Freedom is having options. Freedom is options. At first, you have very few options. You have to survive. Then you have to prove you can make something. Then, if you're lucky, you get to choose bigger problems.
Bigger problems were attractive to you?
Yes. Small problems can be painful because they don't want to explain the pain. A big problem gives pain a structure. It gives you something to aim at.
Were you trying to prove something?
Probably. I would have denied that at the time. I would have said I was being rational, following opportunity, thinking from first principles. And some of that was true. But people are rarely driven by one thing,
What else was driving you?
the feeling that if I stayed still, the world would define me. If I moved fast enough, maybe I could define something first.
Define what?
My future, maybe the future more broadly, that sounds grandiose. But when you're young, you don't always know the difference between ambition and escape.
Do you know now?
Better than I did. Not perfectly.
You left Stanford after 2 days.
Yeah.
Why not wait?
Because the internet was happening. It felt obvious to me that it was going to change the structure of society. Not a little bit, a lot. And when something like that is happening, waiting can feel more dangerous than moving.
Dangerous how?
Because the window doesn't stay open forever. People think risk is only what happens when you act. But inaction is also a risk. Staying in the safe path can be a very expensive decision if the world is shifting underneath you.
Were you reckless?
Probably. But not randomly reckless. There's a difference. Reckless, jumping was look very hard, decide the probability was worth it, and then jump before I talked myself out of it.
Did people understand that?
Some did, most didn't. But that's normal. If everybody agrees with the decision, it's probably not that unusual. The hard decisions usually look wrong until they don't.
What did you see that others missed?
I don't know that I saw more. Maybe I just assigned more weight to the upside. The internet was not just a business opportunity. It was a new nervous system for information. Once you see that, it becomes difficult to sit in a classroom and pretend the timing doesn't matter.
You make it sound obvious.
It wasn't obvious emotionally. I was young. I didn't have a guarantee. I didn't know Zip 2 would work. I didn't know anything would work. I just knew that if I didn't try, I would probably regret it more than failing.
Regret scared you more than failure.
Yes. Failure gives you data. Regret just sits there.
Zip 2 worked. PayPal worked. After that, why not stop?
That's the question a normal person would ask.
And you're not normal.
I've been accused of that, yes. But honestly, after PayPal, I did have enough money to live a very comfortable life. And for a short period, that is interesting. You can buy things, you can travel, you can do what people imagine rich people do.
But it didn't last.
No. Because then the question becomes, okay, now what? If you believe there are problems that matter at the civilization level, sitting on a beach starts to feel wrong. Not morally wrong for everyone, just wrong for me.
What did the money not solve?
It didn't solve urgency, it amplified it. Before PayPal, maybe I could say someone should work on this. After PayPal, that excuse became weaker. If you have resources and you see a thing that matters, not acting becomes its own kind of action.
So money became pressure.
Yes, money gives you optionality, and optionality can become pressure if you have a certain kind of brain.
What kind?
The kind that keeps asking, what is the most important thing I could be doing? Which sounds noble until you realize it makes ordinary life very difficult.
Did success make you calmer?
No. Success is not calming if you interpret it as permission to increase the difficulty level.
Is that what you did?
Obviously.
Why SpaceX?
Because space access was too expensive. If the cost of getting to orbit stays extremely high, then humanity's future is stuck on one planet. That seemed like a bad strategy.
A bad strategy?
Yes. If all consciousness is on one planet and that planet has enough risks over a long enough timeline, then eventually something bad happens. You don't need to know exactly what. The probability is enough.
Most people would call that extreme.
Most people are not wrong to live normal lives. I want to be clear about that. Normal life is not failure. But for me, once I saw the problem, I couldn't unsee it.
Did the money buy freedom?
It bought the ability to take bigger risks. That's different from freedom.
Different how?
Freedom sounds peaceful. Bigger risk is not peaceful. It just means the problems get larger and the consequences get less private.
People told you no.
A lot of people told me no.
Did that help?
Sometimes. A useful no is very valuable. If someone says no because physics says no, or because the math doesn't work, or because the system fails under pressure, you should listen very carefully.
And the useless no?
The useless no is usually memory pretending to be wisdom. It means this has not worked before, so it cannot work now. But the technology may be different. The team may be different. The assumptions may be wrong.
Who gets to tell you no?
Physics.
People?
People can tell me no. They do.
Do you hear it?
Depends on whether the no is useful.
Who decides that?
Ultimately, reality. If the rocket explodes, reality is saying no. If customers don't buy the car, reality is saying no. If the system fails, reality is saying no.
That's not the same as a person saying no.
No, it isn't.
So who stops you before reality does?
That's the hard question. Because with difficult things, consensus can be wrong. Very wrong. If you let consensus fully determine action, you often get no action. Most people are not rewarded for saying yes to something that might fail publicly.
But what happens without constraints?
Then you have to build better internal constraints, or you become dangerous.
Have you?
Become dangerous?
Yes.
I think anyone operating at sufficient scale has that possibility. It would be dishonest to say otherwise.
That's not quite an answer.
I know. I've made mistakes. I've moved too fast. I've trusted my own sense of urgency too much. The difficult part is that sometimes urgency is correct. Sometimes waiting really is the mistake. But sometimes urgency is just fear wearing a better suit.
How do you know the difference?
Often too late.
That's the risk.
Yes. And it's not just my risks. That's the uncomfortable part. When you're young, your mistakes are mostly local. They hurt you, maybe a few people around you. Later, when the systems are bigger, your mistakes travel farther.
Does that change how you decide?
It should. I think it does. Not always enough.
Do you trust people?
Some people.
Or only systems?
Systems are easier to trust because you can inspect them, you can test them. People require a different kind of trust, less clean, more vulnerable.
Is that difficult for you?
Yes. More difficult than rockets in some ways.
After the third Falcon failure, did you still believe?
Belief is the wrong word. Belief sounds soft. We had data, we had failure analysis, we had people working incredibly hard. We had enough information to think the next attempt could work. But emotionally, it was brutal.
What did failure sound like?
Quiet. That's what people don't understand. A rocket failure is loud when it happens. Then afterward, everything becomes quiet. Engineers replaying data. Nobody wants to say the obvious thing too early. Everyone is calculating what is left.
What was left?
Money, hardware, time, credibility, energy. People think companies fail in dramatic moments. Sometimes they do, but often failure is just a spreadsheet becoming smaller.
Were you scared?
Yes, but again, I didn't label it that way. I called it urgency. That was more useful. Fear can paralyze you. Urgency gives everyone something to do.
Did SpaceX almost die?
Yes. It was a real possibility. Not theoretical, real. There are moments where the future of a company becomes very small. It fits inside one launch window.
And the fourth worked.
It reached orbit, which changed everything. Not because it solved all the problems. It didn't. But it proved the impossible thing was not impossible.
What changed in you?
I don't know if something changed in me. Maybe something got confirmed. Before that, you're a crazy person with a theory. After that, you're still crazy, but now you have evidence.
Did you enjoy it?
Briefly.
Briefly?
Very briefly. Then the next problem arrives. Falcon 9, Dragon, reusability, NASA, Starship, Mars. You don't stay in victory very long when the mission is larger than the milestone.
Why not?
Because the mission doesn't care that you're tired.
That sounds harsh.
It is harsh. But if the goal is to make life multiplanetary, one launch is not the goal. It's a data point. A very important data point, but still a data point.
What did that cost?
A lot. Time, relationships, health, probably, peace of mind, the ability to be fully present in normal moments. People talk about obsession like it's a superpower. Sometimes it is, but a superpower can still damage the person carrying it.
What did obsession remove?
Spaciousness. That's the word, maybe. The ability to just be in a day without converting it into a problem set.
Do you miss that?
I don't know if I ever had it.
That's sad.
Maybe. But it's also useful. And that's the trap. If something hurts you, but also makes you effective, you don't always know whether to heal it or keep using it.
Was Tesla harder than SpaceX?
In some ways, yes. People assume rockets are harder because rockets explode and cars are familiar. But manufacturing cars at scale is insanely difficult. A prototype can be beautiful. A factory is truth.
Truth.
Yes. The factory tells you whether your idea can survive repetition. One car can be inspiring. A million cars require a system that keeps being correct. Even when people are tired, machines are imperfect, suppliers are late, and reality is being annoying in thousands of small ways. So, also.
What did manufacturing teach you?
That the world is physical. That sounds obvious, but a lot of people in technology forget it. Software can hide complexity. If manufacturing exposes it, if a bolt is wrong, it is wrong. If the line stops, the line stops. You can't persuade the factory with a beautiful vision.
When did vision become pain?
When the bottleneck moved from idea to execution. In the beginning, people doubt the idea. Then, if the idea survives, they doubt the execution. But execution is where the real suffering is. That's where sleep disappears. That's where the numbers become very personal.
Personal how?
Because every delay has a human cost. Customers waiting, employees exhausted, critics getting louder, families seeing less of the people working inside the machine. The factory doesn't just consume parts, it consumes attention.
Did it consume you?
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Did you push too hard?
Probably. At times, yes.
Why?
Because I thought the alternative was failure, and sometimes it was. But that mindset can become dangerous, right? Because once every day feels existential, you start treating every conversation like it's like it's part of the emergency.
Even when it isn't.
Especially when it isn't. That's the problem. Crisis thinking can be useful when the building is actually on fire. But if you live in that state long enough, you start smelling smoke everywhere.
What happens to people around you?
Some people become stronger, some leave, some get hurt, some do the best work of their lives and also pay a price for it. I don't think there's a clean answer.
That sounds like a hard thing to admit.
It is. Because if the company succeeds, people want a simple story. The visionary pushed hard and changed the world. If the company fails, people want a simple story. The reckless founder pushed too hard and broke everything.
And the truth?
The truth is messier. Sometimes the same pressure that saves the company also damages people. Sometimes the same intensity that creates the breakthrough creates the wound.
Do results excuse the wound?
No. But results affect how people remember it. That's uncomfortable, but it's true.
How do you remember it?
As necessary in some places, too much in others, and hard to separate while it's happening.
What would you do differently?
I would try to distinguish urgency from panic earlier. They can look very similar from the outside. Inside, too. Urgency is clear. Panic is noisy. But when you're exhausted, you can mistake noise for signal.
Did you?
Yes, more than once.
And Zia, still Tesla worked.
It survived. That's the word I would use first. Then it worked. Survival comes before success. People see the success and assume the path was inevitable. It wasn't. Nothing about it felt inevitable while it was happening.
What did survival feel like?
Like standing under a machine while it's still being built, hoping it starts working before it falls on you.
Why keep adding worlds?
Because the problems are connected. Energy, transport, space, AI, communication. They look separate from the outside, but they're not separate in my mind.
How are they connected?
Sustainable energies matter if civilization is going to last. Space matters if consciousness needs redundancy. AI matters because it may become the most powerful technology we've ever built. Communication platforms matter because information flow shapes what people believe is real.
That sounds logical.
It is logical.
It also sounds like no escape.
That may also be true.
Is one mission ever enough?
Maybe for a healthier person.
Healthier?
I don't mean physically, I mean psychologically. Some people can choose a build it well and be satisfied inside it. I admire that. I don't seem to work that way.
What happens after one mission starts working?
The next constraint becomes visible. That's the problem with solving hard things. You don't arrive at peace, you arrive at a better class of problem.
Give me an example.
If electric cars work, then the grid matters. Batteries matter. Manufacturing matters. Mining matters. If rockets become reusable, then Mars becomes less theoretical. If AI accelerates, then platform controls, information flow become urgent. then if a platform controls this information flow, then speech and trust, this infrastructure questions.
So every solution opens a door.
Yes. And behind the door is usually another room on fire.
Are you building or escaping stillness?
I don't know. Maybe both.
Both?
Building is real. The work is real. The problems are real. But stillness is difficult. If you spend enough years in crisis, your nervous system starts treating crisis peace. Then peace doesn't feel like peace. It feels like missing data.
Missing data.
Yes. Like something is wrong, but you haven't found it yet.
Does that make you keep moving?
I think so. Motion becomes a kind of safety, not emotional safety, exactly. More like operational safety. If you're building, if you're moving, solving, building, then you don't have to sit too long with the parts of yourself that don't have a clean solution.
What parts?
The ordinary parts: loneliness, regret. The fact that saying you can build extraordinary machines and still be confused by a normal human conversation.
That surprises you?
It annoys me, which is not the same thing.
Why?
Because it suggests there are problems that don't yield to force. You can't brute force trust. You can't scale intimacy the way you scale manufacturing. You can't solve peace by adding more engineers.
Have you tried?
Not directly, but maybe indirectly, yes. By making the mission big enough that the personal questions become smaller.
Did that work?
Temporarily. A large enough mission can organize your pain. It gives the pain direction. But direction is not the same as healing.
What happens when crisis becomes home?
You become very good in emergencies and less good outside them.
Less good how?
Normal life starts to feel inefficient. A quiet dinner can feel strange. A slow conversation can feel like it has no objective function. Rest can feel like a system error. That's not good, obviously. But if it begins to treat calm in crisis mode, your mind begins to treat calm as suspicious.
Do you know who you are without it?
I'm not sure. I have moments with my kids sometimes, or when I'm looking at something beautiful from an engineering standpoint, a clean design, a simple solution, a machine doing exactly what it was built to do. But if you mean sustained peace, no, I don't know that I'm optimized for that.
Optimized.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Even the language is wrong.
What would be the right language?
Human, probably.
Does success make that harder?
Success gives you more leverage. It does not automatically give you more wisdom. In fact, sometimes it removes feedback because people become less willing to tell you the truth.
Because they're afraid?
Sometimes. Or because they want something. Or because they think you already know. Or because the system around success starts filtering reality before it reaches you.
Do you miss being unknown?
No, not exactly. Being unknown has its own problems. But I miss when mistakes were smaller. I miss when an error was just an error, not a headline, not a market reaction, not a political event, not a public argument between people who weren't in the room.
What did success not fix?
The need to prove something, maybe. It reduced certain fears and created larger ones. When you're young, you're afraid you won't matter. Later, you become afraid that what you built matters too much to fail.
That's not peace.
No, it's a different shape of anxiety.
Do people around you see that?
Some do. Some see the output and assume the person producing it must be built differently. And maybe I am in some ways. But different is not the same as invulnerable.
Do you feel invulnerable?
No, I think I can look that way because I keep moving. Motion can be mistaken for strength. Sometimes it is strength. Sometimes it is avoidance with better branding.
Avoidance of what?
Stillness, regret, ordinary emptiness. The parts of life that don't improve just because the company valuation goes up or the rocket reaches orbit.
What does peace feel like?
Unfamiliar.
Do you want it?
I think I want the ability to tolerate it. That might be a more honest answer.
When does intensity become cruelty?
When you stop seeing the person and only see the constraint.
Have you done that?
I think I have. I don't say that proudly. But yes, I think there were times when I saw the bottleneck more clearly than the human being standing next to it.
What makes that happen?
Pressure, exhaustion, fear, a belief that the mission is too important to slow down. And sometimes that belief is correct. That's what makes it dangerous.
Correct and dangerous.
Yes. People want clean categories. Good leadership, bad leadership, visionary, tyrant, genius, reckless. But in reality, the same trait can produce the breakthrough and the damage.
Which trait?
Refusal to accept the current limit. That can be good. It can get a rocket to orbit. It can make electric cars viable. It can force a factory to improve. But if you apply it to people without care, you can break things that don't repair like machines.
Do results excuse the damage?
No. But results affect how people remember it. If the company fails, the intensity is called delusion. If the company succeeds, the same intensity is called leadership. Neither word is fully honest.
What is honest?
That building hard things can bring out the best and worst parts of a person. Sometimes in the same week. Sometimes in the same meeting.
Have you mistaken pressure for truth?
Yes.
How?
By assuming that if someone resisted pressure, they didn't understand the mission. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were seeing a human cost I was not seeing clearly enough.
That's difficult to admit.
It is. Because if you admit that too much, people say, okay, then slow down. But if you slow down too much, the company dies, the mission fails, the window closes. So you end up negotiating with reality and morality at the same time.
Which one usually wins?
Reality, if you let it, reality is louder. A rocket either launches or it doesn't. A production line either runs or it doesn't. Human cost is quieter. It accumulates.
Do you notice it late?
Often, yes. Too late sometimes.
What does that do to you?
It makes the victory less clean. You can look at something that worked and still know the process left marks on people. On you too.
Does that change the next decision?
It should. I tried to make it change the next decision, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I suddenly became a perfectly balanced person. That would be dishonest.
What are you trying to become?
More accurate.
Not kinder?
Kinder, yes. But even kindness requires accuracy. If you don't accurately see what your intensity is doing to people, then kindness becomes a word you use after the damage.
Do you think people are afraid of you?
Some people probably are.
Does that bother you?
Yes. And part of me also understands why it happened. That's the uncomfortable answer. In extreme situations, fear can create motion. But fear is a crude tool. It damages trust. And without trust, you need even more force to move the system. That becomes a bad loop.
How do you break it?
Better people around you, better feedback, more willingness to be wrong in public, more constraints that don't depend on your mood or your certainty.
Do you have that?
Not enough. More than before, maybe, but not enough.
Why not?
Because power edits the room before you enter it. People adjust. They choose words carefully. They bring you the version of reality they think you can tolerate, or the version that protects them. So the higher you go, the more work it takes to get the truth.
And if you don't get it?
You start believing your own altitude.
Are you still just building tools?
No, not just tools. Tools become systems. Systems shape behavior. If you build at sufficient scale, you have to admit that.
X is not just a tool.
No, a social platform is not just a tool. It's partly software, partly infrastructure, partly psychology, partly politics, partly public square. It's messy because people are messy.
Why enter that mess?
Because information flow matters. What people see, what they don't see, what they're allowed to say, what gets amplified, what gets buried, that shapes society. You can't pretend that's neutral.
A lot of people think you made it worse.
I know.
Does that bother you?
Of course. I mean, yes. But people often judge a system from inside the outcome they prefer. If they like the old system, disruption looks like damage. If they hated the old system, disruption looks like liberation. The truth is usually more uncomfortable.
Which is?
That changing a system can reveal problems you didn't create and create problems you didn't predict.
What did you not predict?
The emotional load of it, not the criticism. I expected criticism, but the way a platform becomes a mirror for everyone's anger. People don't just use it. They project onto it, then they project onto you.
And AI.
AI is different. With cars, rockets, satellites, tunnels, you're still mostly dealing with atoms and systems we can model. AI has a different kind of uncertainty. It can scale cognition. That changes everything.
Does it scare you?
Yes. I've said for a long time that AI safety matters, but fear alone is not a strategy. You need to build, regulate, understand, compete, align. You can't just stand outside the arena and complain that the arena exists.
What if the builder is also the risk?
Then you need better governance, better transparency, better competition, better constraints. You need systems that do not depend on one person being wise all the time.
Do your systems depend on that?
I hope not, but probably more than they should.
That's a rare answer.
It's an obvious. It's one. People just don't like saying it out loud.
What scares you about your own power?
The risk is not that I wake up and think, I want power. That's cartoonish. The risk is that each step feels justified by the problem in front of you. This company needs saving. This technology needs accelerating. This platform needs changing. This AI needs competing with. Each decision has local logic, but like accumulation becomes something else.
What does it become?
A person with too many levers.
Is that you?
Maybe, at times.
Who gets to tell that person no?
Ideally, many people. Reality, law, markets, users, employees, my own teams, friends, if I'm listening, family in a different way. But listening is the key part.
Do you listen?
Not enough. sometimes, more than people think, less than I should.
What makes listening hard?
Speed, certainty, noise. Also, the fact that sometimes I was right when people told me I was wrong. That's dangerous because a few impossible wins can teach you the wrong lesson.
What lesson?
That resistance means you're right. It doesn't. Sometimes resistance means you're early. Sometimes it means you're wrong. Sometimes it means people are afraid. Sometimes it means they understand a cost you're ignoring.
Can you tell the difference?
Better than before. Not always.
What would help?
Slower decisions in areas where the blast radius is social, not just technical. Rockets punish you quickly. Society punishes you slowly. That makes it harder to learn.
You said blast radius.
Yeah. It's not a perfect phrase, but it's useful. Every decision has a blast radius. In a small company, maybe it affects 10 people. At the scale of platforms, AI, satellites, government systems, the radius gets very large.
And that changes the morality?
It should. The physics may be the same, but the responsibility changes.
What did success not fix?
The need to prove something, maybe. It reduced certain fears and created larger ones. When you're young, you're afraid you won't matter. Later, you become afraid that what you built matters too much to fail.
That's not peace.
No, it's a different shape of anxiety.
What part of you is still the same?
The kid trying to make sense of a confusing world by building a smaller world with rules. The scale changed. The impulse didn't.
Is that sad?
Not only sad, it's also useful. You don't build rockets because you're perfectly well adjusted. You build rockets because something in you is not satisfied with the ground.
What did Mars give you that Earth didn't?
Distance. Perspective. A problem big enough to organize pain around.
Say that again.
A problem big enough to organize pain around. If you have pain and no mission, it spreads. If you have a mission, the pain becomes directional. That can create extraordinary output. It can also stop you from healing.
Did it stop you?
I don't know. Maybe. But I'm not sure healing was ever the objective.
What was?
Continuation. Civilization, consciousness continuing. The light not going out.
And you?
Me?
Do you get to continue as a person?
That's harder.
Why?
Because the mission always sounds more important than the person, and sometimes it is. But if you say that too many times, eventually you don't know whether you're sacrificing for the mission or hiding inside it.
Are you hiding?
Sometimes.
From what?
Ordinary emptiness, stillness. The possibility that if nothing is on fire, I may not know what to do with myself.
What still feels unfinished?
Everything. Mars, sustainable energy, AI safety, manufacturing, robotics. X, there's no shortage of unfinished things.
That's the public answer.
Yes.
What's the private one?
I think the private answer is learning how to build without needing the emergency. I don't know if I can do that, but it would be useful.
What would happen if nothing needed saving tomorrow?
I would probably suspect we missed something.
And if we didn't?
Then I'd have to sit with myself.
Would you know how?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know how to live in a world that isn't on fire.